This is a production of KMmedia.pro. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So come on over into our world. I know you'll like it, because on today's show, today we get to feature a very learned man. He's written a book about entrepreneurship, and he works in healthcare. He does a great deal of things. He's from Canada, one of our friends up north, and we're going to be talking to him for the entire hour. But before we go there, I got to go talk to Nathan real quick. Haven't seen him in a week. How you doing, buddy?
It's been a bit, hasn't it, Kevin?
Yes, it has been, and I almost didn't make it today.
Oh, really? What did you do? Get stuck in the rain?
No, my
it is raining out there just a little bit.
It is. I
very
know.
spotty, but hey, it's something.
It was raining. It was supposed to be 85 degrees today. I don't think we're going to make it.
Oh, that might. We'll see. Close. At least the low 80s.
Well, okay. I got to tell you, Nathan, this is one of those days where I'm in pure heaven, because I get to do a show with you now, and our guest Neil Seeman is an extraordinary man. And then at 3:00, I get to join the likes of Oprah and Larry King and many other really interesting interviewers who had the opportunity to interview James Arthur Ray. And
that's quite a lineup.
It really is. I'm very excited. They both of these gentlemen that we're going to interview today are extraordinary human beings and doing some great work, and it's just going to be great fun. But the reason I almost didn't make it is I lost power yesterday because they were reconfiguring my power grid. And then, when you're having a bad day, when you have two electricians looking at your power box going, well, I don't know what's going on. You know what's going on?
Did they try turning it off and on again?
They did. And they said, here, let me wiggle this wire. No, that works. And I'll wiggle this wire. Just like, you guys
almost like the bomb squad. Is it the yellow, green, or red wire?
Exactly. So you never know. And finally, they had to call in an expert who's been doing this since like 1985. And he came in and he was like, oh yeah, it's just this. And so
it was always just that.
So he replaced the parts and it works fine. And so I got to be on the air today. So I'm really excited about that. So,
well, it's great to have you and our guest as well.
Indeed. Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we go ahead and get started with Neil? Because it's going to take me half hour just to read his bio.
Oh, yeah.
So Nathan, it's good to see you, and I'm sure we'll talk throughout the show. But Neil is with us, and Neil, it's Neil Seeman, right?
Yeah, you Kevin, hi there. You can go by Seeman, like
Seeman. Gotcha. Okay. And I will tell you, you're a Canadian author, an internet entrepreneur, and mental health advocate. At the University of Toronto, you teach at the Dalai Lama School of Public Health. You're a senior fellow at the Institute. This is going to take a while, folks, so just hang on. Institute of Health Policy Management and Evaluation, the field of Institute for Research and Mathematical Sciences, the Massey College, and the Investigative Journalism Bureau. He's also a graduate of law school. He's on several editorial boards. He writes for several publications, and he's an author of the latest book, which is called Accelerated Minds, Unlocking the Fascinating, Inspiring, and often destructive impulses that drive the entrepreneurial brain. We're going to have to talk about that, because I know that there are lots of folks these days post-COVID that really are interested in being more of an entrepreneur. They're tired of working for somebody. They want to strike out on their own. And so I recommend getting this book because that will help you get through some of the minefields. So, but first, Neil, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Kevin. It's a real pleasure to speak with you and your audience today. I think the best way of describing me, to cut the bio short, is I'm a mutt. Like I'm a hybrid. I play both in business and in academia, but I get great enjoyment, as do you, by mixing with just really creative, inspiring minds.
I tell you, you are one of them. I got to tell you, and you like school too, because you've been in school.
I think that the reason I like school so much is because I get inspired by young people embarking on new paths, new creative paths. That being said, my closest friend, he's the oldest doctoral student at the university, is in his late 70s. So, there's a wide mix of people that I get to mix with, and it's just people who are questioning norms, questioning conventions, and you see that in academia, but you see it predominantly more often in the business world, in the startup world in particular. And you're in that world too, Kevin. I mean, you are an entrepreneur. A big part of what my book Accelerated Minds is all about is reclaiming that word. It's been defined by Wall Street and Silicon Valley in a very narrow way. But the full breadth of entrepreneurship, in my view, encompasses both nonprofits and for-profits, where you have a founder building something of meaning for them, for their community, and for lasting value beyond their life.
I couldn't agree more, and that is what I am attempting. I got to quit using words like that. Attempting. That's what I am doing.
Yeah, you are it.
I am. That's what I am doing with Positive Talk Radio, because I really think that it's important for all of us to work together and to take care of each other and to be kind and all of those things. But sometimes being an entrepreneur, see, I come from a corporate background, so I'm a flailing around entrepreneur. Sometimes I don't get everything done the way that I would like to have it done. Does that make sense?
Well, every entrepreneur is a flailing entrepreneur, right? Behind every beautiful business is a lot of worms. I don't know if you read Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Did you ever read it?
I have not read it, but I know of it very well.
Yeah, my favorite character is his roommate, Holden Caulfield's roommate, right? So he's in Holden is always in awe of him because he goes out on Saturday nights and all the girls always admire him. And the thing about his roommate is that he's a mess, but he just looks handsome and charismatic as soon as he walks out the door. And that's the way it is with every commercially successful business. But we all know that entrepreneurship is about high highs and low lows twice in one day, as Ben Horowitz famously said.
And so what decided you to write the book about entrepreneurship? I know you work with the brain. Your father was a world-renowned brain scientist, I do believe, was he not?
Yeah, it was my father, Philip Seeman, who passed away in early 2021. And he had discovered the way in which the dopamine receptors in the brain react to various stimuli. And the way drugs, antipsychotics, antidepressants, a whole range of drugs work on those receptors, and how dopamine works in the brain. And what I was seeing in the world of entrepreneurship is a lot of the same conditions that my dad was talking about in his life work. Seeing a lot of high rates of depression, suicide, manic depression or bipolar, and deep crippling anxiety, 3 times elevated rates of serious addiction. And I was seeing the challenges of entrepreneurs not managing their dopamine, that chemical in the brain, which can essentially motivate us to do things that we want to do, but also get us into trouble. So I was seeing those same things happening. So I wanted to write a book inspired by my dad's science, which I, knew very well because I basically grew up in his lab. And then at the same time, make sense of these people, and I include myself in them, people who, entrepreneurs, and a lot of people don't understand us. And that's why I wrote this book, and it's been a really empowering journey.
Well, I'm glad you did, because I'll tell you, the people around me, when I decided to strike out on my own and start an audio production company, they said the same thing to me. They said, "Now look, wait a minute. You're a district sales manager for a major food company. You've got a nice, comfortable job, a nice salary. Why would you want to screw that up by going and trying to follow your heart and follow your dream and to do something unique? Why would you do that?" So some people just don't understand what would motivate a guy like me to do what I did, rather than just being comfortable and being in the corporate job 9 to 5 until I retired. Why do you think there are people that will poo-poo that, number one, and why are there people like me that want to strike out on their own?
Yes, the first question is easier to answer, Kevin. I mean, so for many of us, right, or for most people, entrepreneurship is an economically irrational sort of way in which to accumulate wealth, right? Just based
That's what they kept saying.
Right.
How irrational are you?
Right. But that being said, the reason people say that, and they've said that to every single entrepreneur, successful or not, in history, is that oftentimes the people around you, your loved ones especially, they're out to protect you, right? Like they're often trying to say they're trying to act sometimes like in your best interest. They're, and a lot of people, a lot of people also kind of, harbor a little bit of, let's just say, kind of, I don't know what the right word is. It's not schadenfreude, but it's everyone wants to embark on their own. I mean, I can't speak for corporate America, but most people I know in corporate Canada want to do something a little bit different. And so they want to see, they kind of, they're a little bit kind of, wow, you're a risk taker. That's kind of what I want to do. That's not you, that's me, kind of thing. Or anyway, they're projecting is really what I'm saying, or they're protecting. Now, your second question, what's going on with people like me, is like you're someone who manifests a number of attributes. Oftentimes, you're open. You have an openness to new ideas. There's a lot of misinformation around risk taking in entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs generally like to actually control risk. So they like to take healthy risks. So when you don't work for what my grandfather called Yemen, like the man, you actually are trying to control risk. You're trying to control your own outcomes, and that's what I would say is happening in the new post-COVID environment, is that people are looking at this labor market fluctuation. Some people call it the poly crisis, events in the world that are objectively turmoil. And they're saying, look, I want to manifest control over my destiny. And this is why we're seeing increasing rates of entrepreneurship, not only among young people, but among people 60 plus. I mean, that new immigrants in particular, and 60 plus individuals. I mean, this is this is cross-generational, this phenomenon. So people they want to control their destiny. They want autonomy, empowerment. And yeah, they want to take that healthy risk.
And sometimes it can be an unhealthy risk if you don't do your homework and you're real clear about what it is that you want to do, and that can turn into a bad thing. I wanted to ask you, before I go there though, I wanted to ask you, dopamine, where does that come from? Where does it get excreted from? And what does it do for us, good and bad?
Yeah, so dopamine, it's a naturally recurring chemical in the brain. It was discovered by Catherine Montague in the late 1950s in a hospital outside London. But then later it was discovered that it was a neurotransmitter, and and it acted as a receptor essentially. So it's a little like, it's the sign of like a safety. It's the size of about a safety pin relative to an aircraft carrier, and a really tiny thing in the brain. And so we all have it. And the way it's received, it's almost like a key in a lock structure. And what we have, these sort of phasic or tonic blasts of dopamine whenever we seek out reward. And what one person's reward is different from another person's reward. And we attach salience. What dopamine does is it's a chemical that attaches salience to things that are of deep meaning to us. And those things often get cemented very early in life. So if it's what my grandfather called sleep or money, right, then that gets attached very early in life. Or if it's something more altruistic, like benefiting your community, that gets cemented early in life. So it's about meaning and what gives us meaning. So it circulates in the brain. Sometimes it's random, sometimes it's not. And the theory, right? The theory that I put forward in this book, and that is supported by the data, is that entrepreneurs in particular, it's a spectrum, but entrepreneurs get their highest dopamine blast and release when they first start talking about their new business venture, when they first seek it out. And this has been proven through the work of people like Helen Pushkaraya at Yale University and others, right? Like, and then over time, you keep just, sort of like addiction, you keep seeking that out. You keep seeking that high out. And of course, no high is as good as that first high. So when things are not kept in check, and there are ways to keep that dopamine, let's just say overreactivity in check, if it's not kept in check, you can slip and fall into a really negative abyss.
So it can be positive or negative.
Oh, that's right. It can spur us to action. It can motivate us to sort of be attracted to a romantic partner. It can inflame, our motivation to pursue something of meaning, but it needs to be regulated. And this is really so dopamine isn't a problem. It's something to be managed. And what happens with psychosis is it doesn't get managed well, and so we need these drugs that are often referred to as antipsychotics to treat it. But in some people, it isn't managed well, and it can lead to all sorts of harms. And for entrepreneurs, most entrepreneurs are actually not motivated by sleet or money, right? Like, I know that's so that's so strange to hear that. But the reality is most founders are driven to actually create something of lasting value, right?
Right.
And so what I've been seeing and what I write about in my book is, we have these founders who are creating something for the long term, and yet there are pressures in the ecosystem, both the investor ecosystem and the social ecosystem, that force us toward what I call short-termism, short-term thinking. And that short-term thinking really puts both entrepreneurship and innovation at harm. And we should all care about this. And the reason we should care about this is because we know entrepreneurship is the soul of innovation in America and Canada, across the world, according to the OECD and others. And so we need to care about the mental health of entrepreneurs, lest our employees suffer, our economy suffer. So these are the reasons we need to care about this topic.
So let me see if I understand, because I'm a little slow. So let me work on this for a sec. And that is like, if you are, as an example, an athlete, and you have a goal, and you win your race, is the euphoria that you feel, is that dopamine? Is that a dopamine spike?
So yeah, that in particular, maybe a mild dopamine spike. It made like the actual the desire to seek that reward or win that race. That's the dopamine spike, right? And so the actual achievement may not actually yield any dopamine spike whatsoever, but it's the seeking out of that particular reward. That's what gets the dopamine triggered. If you know what I mean. So at whatever, yeah.
So I'm see what I'm trying to understand here is why because at the end of, I may be tired. I may not have slept well the night before, but every time I get to do an interview, every time I get to talk to someone like you, and by the way, we are talking to Neil Seeman, and you can go to neilseeman.com, and you can learn all about him, his work, the book he has out. You can pick it up at Amazon and everywhere else. So it's Neil Seeman, Seeman, and you can find out all about him. Because but I'm curious, because when I get done with an interview, I may be tired, I may be really ready for a nap, but I'm energized by talking to people like you, by creating you and I creating a show together. It energizes me. It makes me feel good. Am I actually addicted to, I hate to say this, am I addicted to interviewing people?
I mean, we've had, this is our second conversation, Kevin, and far be it from me to diagnose everything that's going on in your very large brain. What I would suggest is you have what many people in entrepreneurship call overactive brain syndrome, which is great. Like, hey, that's the fuel of creative ideas. So when you interact with a fellow mutt, and I suspect that you're a mutt, I'm a mutt, we have a range of interests based on our conversations, that energizes you. So at some point, maybe in your history or your life, you were cemented with the expression, with the feeling that meeting people and talking with people who share your values and your interests gives you electric meaning. So I don't know necessarily, for example, so a dopamine thesis would suggest that it may not be the actual moment we're having a conversation now, but it may have been the anticipation. Don't get me wrong, I'm of no special import in the world, but I suspect that it was the anticipation of you having this conversation with me that made you excited inside your brain.
I suppose, but it's the act of doing it. Well, let me give you an example. When I was very young, in the late teens, early 20s, I fell into the restaurant business, which I really dearly enjoyed, and I loved being a host and taking people to their table, and there was no pressure in that. I didn't have to wait on them or anything, but I could just take them there and enjoy them and enjoy the conversation. And so I have always been that way with people. And this is an extension of that. Only I get to do it like you're in Toronto and I'm in Seattle, and we still get to have this dynamic conversation. And it really is a lot of fun. And then later on, I get to go to Nevada and talk to somebody else. So for me, this is what drives me and what drives my life. And I hope that doesn't make me psychotic.
Well,
do I need to take a pill?
Yeah, so part of the purpose of my book is to normalize these conditions like psychosis, and I think it's a spectrum. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have that condition at all, but these phenomena like overactive brain syndrome, the getting what's called a dopaminergic effect when you meet someone and talk with someone who shares your values. I mean, look, it's embedded in the name of your radio show, Positive Talk Radio. I mean, you're speaking with somebody like I'm a lover of all entrepreneurs and all great ideas. So we share that value. So it's a positive reinforcement cycle as well, right? So right. I think both of us are getting charged by this. I'm very selective in who I interact with now post-COVID. I think this is a phenomenon that's happening with a lot of people. So I love to surround myself only, in fact, to the extent I can, with people who have and manifest positivity. So I think it's a self-reinforcement signal. I think that being weird is actually normal. Like, as entrepreneurs, it's interesting, right? Like, when I first came out very publicly in a major medical journal about my own experience and challenges with really crippling anxiety, actually, I was quite nervous about it. And then subsequent to that, I had all these entrepreneurs, and subsequent to the book coming out, I should say, I have had all these entrepreneurs, some of them are household names, by the way, come to me and say, my goodness, I've got the same thing, or I'm dealing with the same thing. Like, for entrepreneurs, vulnerability in others is often the trait that we admire the most. And yet we're often very unwilling to talk about our own problems, because, my goodness, to not be seen as a stoic superhero as an entrepreneur, that's not cool with the investor community or certain other people, and we often self-impose this stigma as well, right? Like, we have this caricature of an entrepreneur right now as this superhero, as this 20-something superhero, in a dorm room who's just graduated from Stanford or something like that. That's not reflective of the entrepreneurial population that's driving prosperity in North America.
Exactly. Well, we all, I think, and you said it earlier, I think most of us would like to be master of our own ship, have our own design, be able to create our own thing and make a living doing what we love to do. Some of us can get closer to it than others, and some people are just reluctant to do that because it is a bit of a risk to become an entrepreneur. And some people, because of their families and their situation, they just assume, I'm just going to be safe. My father was that way. He ended up working at a corporate job for 30 years, even though he wanted to be a golf pro. He would have had a great time being a golf pro, but he just didn't feel like that would have been enough for the stereotype that he had imprinted in his brain. That's who I am, and I can't go do that. And so we're going to talk more about that when we come back. We're talking with Neil Seeman, and he's written the book Accelerated Minds, Unlocking the Fascinating, Inspiring, and Often Destructive Impulses that Drive the I can't even say it, the entrepreneurial brain. If you are an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur wannabe, you're going to want to listen to or watch the last half of the show, because it's pretty important stuff, and he can help you avoid some of the minefield that's out there that we all face from time to time. So you're listening to Positive Talk Radio right here on KKNW 1150 AM. We'll be right back after these commercial messages. Hey, PTR loyal listener. First, thanks for being in my dream. And second, I have a new concept in business to share with you. It's called socialpreneurship. So, what's that? Well, it's the idea that any company designates all profits, beyond expenses, to be awarded to a local or international charity or project which is working to achieve good in the world. KM Media is such a company. We believe that it's important for us to give back whenever possible and to make great things happen. So I hope you'll join us in creating this new business model that will positively impact all of us. In the next few weeks, we will lay out the plan and begin our fundraising efforts. So stay tuned for more details right here on Positive Talk Radio.
When you want to say more than words communicate, you can with flowers. Your custom boutique floral studio in Bothell, Washington is anaturaldesign.com, connecting you to nature through the language of flowers. Where your people are is where our flowers are beautiful. Your success is our goal. anaturaldesign.com at your fingertips today.
Hey, thanks for listening to Positive Talk Radio. Did you know that we're also a media production company? Well, surprise, we are. We can create all kinds of audio, video products to fill any need. Please visit kmmedia.pro/our-store for a complete list of products and services. In addition, do you need a great voice to add to your own website or any other project? I know that we can add depth and quality to your work. I've been told more times than I can count by many professionals in the business that my voice adds to the quality of the presentation. So, let me create something for you. Please contact me at kevin@kmmedia.pro and let's create something great. And welcome back, everybody, to Positive Talk Radio. My name is Kevin McDonald, but you probably knew that, or if you didn't know that, this is the first time you've listened to the show. And if that's the case, shame on you, where you've been for the last 20 years. And I want to introduce again our guest for the hour. His name is Neil Seeman, and it's SEEMAN, and you can go to neilseeman.com and get all the information about him and his current book, which is Accelerated Minds: Unlocking the Fascinating, Inspiring, and Often Destructive Impulses that Drive the Entrepreneurial Brain. Now, Neil, you heard one of the commercials, which is a new term that is out there that we are advocating. It's called socialpreneurism. Have you heard of that?
Kevin, no, I haven't heard that particular expression. I've heard there's a range of, let's say, competitor expressions that are kind of similar, like conscious capitalism, social impact. I'm even hearing regenerative capitalism these days. So I don't know if it's perfectly aligned. I've used the phrase kinder capitalism, but one thing that they all seem to share in common is this concept of long-termism, like just long-term growth and a sensitivity to your stakeholders and your community that goes beyond just the narrow conception of profit, right? So that, and not to suggest that profit isn't a good thing, but just that those seem to be the ideas that a lot of these new concepts share that are really taking off.
Well, the interesting thing is profit can be viewed as a dirty word, but if you don't have a profitable company, then you won't be around long. So if you are trying to be around long and to make a statement, to create a legacy, and to create something that'll be lasting long term, profit can't be a dirty word because it is a necessary component of you getting to where you want to be. Would that be true, sir?
Yeah, I mean, Steve Jobs was imperfect, like all entrepreneurs.
As we all are.
But he had the best definition of entrepreneurship, or the one of them that I quite like, which is that, hey, what entrepreneurs want to do is they want to put a dent in the universe, right? And so they want it to be lasting, but if they want that dent not to be sort of crooked and spindly out of control, then it's going to have to survive. So at the end of the day, business is sort of the art of survival as well. And so, yeah, you need that profit as one of your, key drivers.
Well, yeah, because I told you I was in the restaurant business. Every restaurant business that I used to work for as either an employee or a general manager no longer exists today because it's a hard way to make a living.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. Like there are many industries that have gone through turmoil, right? I mean, I was talking with a professional photographer who teaches photography the other day, and he's explaining to me that there was a time not long ago where you could a magazine cover, right? You could shoot that and it would be $10,000. Now you're lucky if you get $150, right, for something like that. And yet still he teaches photography, and his students aspire to be professional photographers. That being said, there's always a way to make it work. And I look at industries like restaurants, for example, or books, or even like in media, like industries that some people think are in kind of the throes of disaster and stuff. And I actually see them as opportunity sets. Like I see them, oftentimes as like people want to connect, right? They want to eat. They want to share. I mean, we've learned that about ourselves more so than ever in the last few years. And so what kind of model can work? And so one of the beauties of entrepreneurship is kind of hacking the sales and profit model, and mapping it to a solution that we know we want. So maybe the vehicle of delivery of the traditional restaurant is changing, but the demand and need for a restaurant. So I always find industries in turmoil very interesting to me.
Well, you are correct, sir, because I'm not going to use the name of the restaurant, but I will tell you that at one time they had like 90 of them in throughout the Northwest and the Midwest. And the business decisions that were made, well, first of all, the owner got very, very lucky, and he was at the right spot at the right time, where the ability for him to create the model he created, he could do inexpensively, because at that time fish was very inexpensive, and especially whitefish, and you could make fish and chips and that kind of thing. But his business decisions were made at 3:00 in the morning over a bottle of scotch. Now, that's probably not, if I were to create a business model, a bottle of scotch at 3:00 in the morning, making decisions that will affect hundreds or if not thousands of people, probably isn't the best way to go about things. And that's in your book, you talk about the often destructive impulses. That's one of those, isn't it? Is making decisions with a bottle of scotch at 3:00 in the morning?
Well, for me, it certainly would be. For me, that would impair me for more than just the next day. I was habituated to, I think, a 3-day hangover with 2 glasses of wine. So everyone's a little bit different, and they can manage that differently. And alcohol specifically, of course, can lend itself to all sorts of problems if not managed appropriately. But I mean, your point more fundamentally is, a lot, maybe most of entrepreneurial success is about fortune, randomness, and good timing. The art is long. The occasion instant. It was either Twain or Shakespeare that said that, right? So I'm betting on Shakespeare there. I'm not sure, but the idea being that you need to, like an entrepreneur, your brain needs to be open to the opportunity. You need to think long term, and yet when you need to act instantly. One of the things about the last few years, in particular the last year, where we've seen these wild interest rate fluctuations, is I think a lot of people have started to recognize just how fragile certain industries and certain businesses that we used to think of as solid are. And that, I think, is actually a healthy thing for new entrepreneurs, because it just makes them pay a little more caution to that business plan, makes them be more sensitive to a variety of variables that can go awry.
One of these days I'm going to create a game, and it'll be a kind of a card game, kind of like a Pictionary or something, and it'll be name the number of businesses that have started up and gone out of business in my lifetime. And there are many. And when you start to think about it, I was doing a show the other day, and I said to the gentleman that was on, and he was quite a bit younger than me, I said, "Do you remember Photomat?"
Yeah.
He didn't.
Yeah, like businesses are like rock bands. Like, I really feel that, one of the things I talk about in my book is how Neil Young's a great Canadian rock star.
Yes,
Canadian American. It's a long story with his life, but he has 7 patents on a toy train company called Lionel, and he's like consummate serial entrepreneur, in and out of bands, that kind of thing. And hey, rock bands. I mean, that I always love, right? You're speaking with a younger generation, and you mention a sort of a world famous rock band. I don't know, Devo, or Van Halen, and what are you talking about? They know about Nirvana, which is interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's like, my old Latin teacher used to say, tempus really does fugit, right? Time flies, and we often just forget the temporariness of important things.
Is that why some of us pursue entrepreneurship, because we want more permanency of our legacy? We would like to live beyond our personal lifespan, and to leave something behind that can positively affect the planet.
Wow, Kevin, you're the first person to ask me that question. I think it's just such an important, brilliant question. So the answer is yes, for a certain type of entrepreneur, the entrepreneur that I call the values-based entrepreneur. So the values-based entrepreneur, and based on what I know about you, you're one of them, does want to continue and leave a legacy. I have a friend and colleague who's in the education business. He gave a talk called about how his exit plan is death. It's continuity, right? Like, it's actually a word that I want to expunge from my vocabulary. Exit, right? It's like, okay, it's all about the exit. Well, no, it's not about the exit. It's about the legacy, right? It's about the continuity. It's about the survival. It's about the ecosystem. We're building businesses to last. And this is basic stuff, right? Like, the whole concept of entrepreneurial businesses just, lasting a few years in order to reap a quick reward, that's a relatively recent phenomenon. I have my reasons and speculations as to why, but no, I mean, historically, it was about building businesses to last beyond our lifetime. So yes, I agree with you, especially for people who are building businesses for certain values of their own in their community.
Yeah, because you mentioned it, rock bands, even famous people. When you get past a certain number of years, I asked some young people, do you remember Bob Hope? No. Do you remember Bing Crosby? No. Do you remember Sammy Davis Jr.? Who? All these people are still fresh in my mind because I saw them, but after they're gone and their movies get put in the back of the shelf, then, and I think for some of us that really bothers us, that we will cease to exist here on the planet, and if our legacy also ceases to exist, we haven't accomplished anything. We've just been a flash in the pan, is a word. Is it? I mean, that's, I know that sounds like I should be, maybe I don't know, committed, but that I would like to leave something lasting, that people can reflect on, and even if it's just a thing of its time, like this interview, that in 20 years will be, well, look at what they were talking about 20 years ago, but it still has value. Does that make sense?
Yeah, indeed. There was a time when there are 2 copies of this interview would have been stored in the Library of Congress for perpetuity. I don't think they have space for all the content that's being created every microsecond. But in my faith, we have an expression when someone passes away, may his or her memory be blessing, right? So the memory continues, and life continues. For entrepreneurs in particular, there's a desire to have a market test of longevity, right? So there's a lot of ways, of course, to leave a lasting impression, right, or a lasting mark on the world, including obviously through family, through good social work, community work, charity is a way. But I love the entrepreneurial way. The entrepreneurial way, and it leaves that community impact, but it also has passed a market test of meaning. When should the seed die, should the seed of the business die, it gives birth to another business, right? Another idea,
Yeah.
right? Like they're all connected. Entrepreneurs, I say, sometimes they're mutts. I dare say both you and I are mutts. Sometimes they're mappers, right? Or a bit of both. Like they map ideas from one area to another. And that's often the seed of great entrepreneurship in the people I've known.
If you were, by the way, again, we're talking with Neil Seeman, SEEMAN.com, NeilSeeman.com. Go there, find out all about him. You can get Accelerated Minds, unlocking the fascinating, inspiring, and often destructive impulses that drive the entrepreneurial brain. I want to ask you, if since you've done all this work with this, would you recommend, if somebody is contemplating being an entrepreneur and really stepping out of their comfort zone and doing something unique, can you give them some idea of, or some ideas on how best to do it so that they don't fall into the trap of destructive behavior?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, on the first side, I always like to encourage people to explore a path of entrepreneurship, right? So there's comfort on one side, and then there's growth on the other, right? and so you can be comfortable and just not grow, right? So growing as a human being, I think, it is about taking leaps and oftentimes leaning in to risk and even leaning into failure. Because it's only from failure that you can grow. So I encourage entrepreneurship, but I encourage healthy entrepreneurship, which is about taking measured steps, taking realistic steps. I'm not, there was this time when that people talked about the BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal, right? Well, I'm all in favor of, meaningful, slow, periodic strategy. That's important. Now, what kind of strategies can you use? So we know that the brain is neuroplastic, that it can modulate itself, right? And when your dopamine is dysregulated, you need a group of people around you who can guide you and say, hey, Kevin, yeah, the focus your eyes on the prize. You're going off here. So a big part of the solution involves surrounding yourself, I call it, with a phalanx of people who share your values. That could be a co-founder. That could be a community of friends. It could be people you only see because they're founders, but from different businesses. Yes, there are other things you can do. Silicon Valley likes to talk about ice baths. Interesting. It's a kind of way of slowing down and hacking your brain to think slower. But those kinds of things are hacks. I mean, the more effective tools that I've found are journaling. Values-based entrepreneurs as a group, we tend to take disappointment and failure very personally, despite us knowing rationally that so much of commercial success can be random or fluctuating depending on certain things beyond our control. We often take these failures very personally. And this can be a problem because it can send us into a paroxysm of despair. So how do you not take things personally? One solution that is very effective is journaling. Writing down every day your accomplishments and your efforts and your worst case fears and what actually happened. So these are some of the techniques that have proven valuable for many entrepreneurs.
Now, when you said ice bath, are you meaning like an ice bath where you take a bunch of ice, you put it into a bathtub, you put a little bit of water in there, and then you get into the ice?
Yeah, it's like polar swims or what I used to amateur box. This is what boxers like to do to train. They would sometimes they turn the water from extreme hot to extreme cold every 30 seconds. I don't know I don't actually know the mechanics of how that works to train your muscles, but it certainly shocks you into thinking differently. There's a famous episode of Seinfeld. I don't know. Do you watch Seinfeld?
Oh yeah, I love Seinfeld.
Okay, so yeah, remember there's this show The Opposite where George Costanza decides to do the opposite of what he's inclined to do, right? He orders the opposite sandwich. He, instead of sitting back, he actually goes up to the woman at the bar stool and introduces himself as an unemployed man living with his parents, et cetera, et cetera. And that yield success. And actually sometimes doing the opposite, it can be something, just taking risks, right, that are a little bit different than what you're inclined to do. That can be something that just basically reorients you away from that downward spiral of thinking. And that's what you need. You need to be aware. Different things work for different people. And there's another entrepreneur I spoke with who forces herself to laugh 15 minutes a day. And the mere act of laughing, like it's just like laughing, like forcing yourself to laugh, that can have a neuromodulation effect, which is very positive and very powerful.
Neuromodulation, what is that? Describe that again for me.
So it's a way, a natural, there are invasive surgical techniques to do this for people who suffer from major extreme depression and other conditions. But essentially they're not generally non-medical ways like ice baths, like doing the opposite, like journaling, non-medical ways, non-invasive ways of modulating or keeping in balance the dopamine flux inside your brain, and just keeping you at calm. What a lot of Buddhism talks about, being in the moment.
And so meditation would be another one.
Meditation would definitely be another one. Meditation, breathing exercises,
or yoga if you can still bend that way.
Yoga, if you could still bend that way. That's right. I've always thought there should be an opportunity set for yoga for people who can't bend that way.
Yeah, it'd be unbendable yoga practices or something like that.
There you go. We just got a business plan. We just need to slap on AI, and then we could raise like $10 million.
Well, and yeah, now that's right. Now they've got what's called hot yoga. Are you familiar with that?
Oh yeah, hot yoga is big. I mean, and from a health management perspective, it's fantastic.
Oh, have you done that?
No, I haven't done. I've just read the research on it, and I have friends who do it. So no, I have not embarked on that particular journey.
Well, someday perhaps. I'll tell you what. If I'll do hot yoga, if you'll do the ice bath.
No, I'm all in on the ice bath. I have no hesitation to do the ice bath. So.
That I can think of a lot of things that would, to me, would be like a torture thing to go into ice like that. But that's
interesting. Yeah. No, okay. I'm with you. I mean, let's do it. I'll go to Seattle. You come to Toronto. We'll figure it out.
Exactly. Or we'll just pretend and then we'll call it good. But by the way, we've been talking with Neil Seeman. Go to his website, which is neilseeman.com. That's SEEMAN.com. Get his book, Accelerated Minds. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to know all the things that can go right and wrong, and this can give you some guidance. We've got just about a minute, Neil, and I would like to step aside and let you tell our audience anything that you would like them to know.
Thank you, Kevin. First of all, I'd just like to thank you. I mean, you're just a tremendous man. You've accomplished a great deal. I'm really honored and proud to be sharing these words with you. I think I'm just going to say one thing. I mein, despite all the turmoil in the world, it still is a beautiful, beautiful world, right? I mean, entrepreneurship, the essence of entrepreneurship is to always recognize that, and to aspire to live that beauty and model that beauty. So that's what I'd say. And I'd love to just thank your listeners. It's been a great hour discussion.
I've enjoyed it thoroughly. And I'll tell you, one of the major reasons why I want to be an entrepreneur is because I see how some people are treated in the workplace. And I would like to have a group of people that work with me. And I think you can ask the folks that do work with me, and they will tell you that they enjoy it immensely because we don't have the downsides and all the other crap that a lot of people put up with and stuff.
So. Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the things that binds all entrepreneurship is we hate bullies. Entrepreneurs fight bullies, right?
Boy,
and
no
that's like the mantra.
Boy, no kidding. And not only do we hate bullies, by the way, Neil Seeman has been our guest. Go to his website, neilseeman.com. And we hate bullies because be kind to each other, because each other's all we've got.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll see you at 3:00. Have a great day, everybody.